The First Amendment to the United States Constitution is a bedrock of American democracy, enshrining fundamental freedoms that have shaped the nation's history and protected the civil liberties of its citizens. Ratified in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This deceptively simple statement has had a profound impact on American society, serving as a bulwark against government overreach and ensuring the free flow of ideas and expression. In this lesson, we will explore the protections afforded by the First Amendment, examine the concept of civil liberties, and highlight landmark cases and figures that have shaped the interpretation and application of this essential constitutional right. The First Amendment encompasses several key freedoms: freedom of speech and expression, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and the rights to assemble peaceably and petition the government. Freedom of speech and expression. The freedom of speech and expression is perhaps the most well-known and widely debated aspect of the First Amendment. This protection safeguards the right of individuals to express their thoughts, opinions, and beliefs without fear of government censorship or retaliation. However, this right is not absolute. The Supreme Court has recognized limitations on speech that incites imminent violence or constitutes obscenity. Two landmark cases illustrate the boundaries of free speech: Schenck v. United States, 1919, and Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969. In Schenck, the court established the clear and present danger test, which allowed the government to restrict speech that posed a clear and present danger of causing substantive evils. However, in Brandenburg, the court narrowed this exception, ruling that speech can only be restricted if it is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. Freedom of religion. The First Amendment's Establishment Clause prohibits the government from establishing an official religion or favoring one religion over others. Simultaneously, the Free Exercise Clause protects individuals' rights to practice their chosen religion freely. The Supreme Court has grappled with balancing these two clauses, as seen in cases like Lemon v. Kurtzman, 1971, which established the Lemon test for determining whether a law violates the Establishment Clause, and Employment Division v. Smith, 1990, which held that generally applicable laws that incidentally burden religious practices do not violate the Free Exercise Clause. Freedom of the press. A free and independent press is essential to a functioning democracy, and the First Amendment safeguards this freedom by prohibiting censorship and prior restraint, government actions to prevent publication or broadcasting. The landmark case Near v. Minnesota, 1931, established the principle that prior restraint is unconstitutional, with narrow exceptions for issues of national security. However, the press is not immune from liability for defamation, which includes libel, written defamation, and slander, spoken defamation. The Supreme Court has sought to balance freedom of the press with protecting individuals' reputations, as seen in the landmark case New York Times v. Sullivan, 1964, which established the actual malice standard for public figures to prevail in defamation cases. Civil liberties refer to the fundamental freedoms and rights guaranteed to individuals by the Constitution and laws of the United States. The First Amendment protects several key civil liberties, including freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. Civil liberties are essential to a thriving democracy, as they ensure that individuals can freely express their views, practice their beliefs, and hold the government accountable. However, these liberties are not absolute. They must be balanced against legitimate public safety and order concerns. The First Amendment's protection of freedom of assembly and the right to petition the government are prime examples of civil liberties in action. Citizens have the right to gather peacefully and voice their grievances to the government, a critical check on government power and a means for effecting change. Landmark cases like Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969, which upheld students' right to wear black armbands in protest of the Vietnam War, and NAACP v. Claiborne Hardware Company, 1982, which protected the right to boycott, have reinforced the importance of these civil liberties. Throughout American history, numerous court cases and individuals have played pivotal roles in shaping the interpretation and application of the First Amendment. Key Supreme Court cases, Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969, established that students do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. New York Times v. Sullivan, 1964, established the actual malice standard for public figures in defamation cases, protecting robust debate on matters of public concern. Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969, narrowed the government's ability to restrict speech, requiring a likelihood of inciting imminent lawless action. Influential figures and activists, John Peter Zenger, a colonial printer whose acquittal in a landmark 1735 libel case helped establish freedom of the press in America. Ida B. Wells, a pioneering African-American journalist and activist who fearlessly reported on lynchings and fought for civil rights in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Mario Savio, a leader of the free speech movement at UC Berkeley in the 1960s, which protested the university's restrictions on political activities on campus. Contemporary First Amendment issues and debates. Hate speech. While offensive speech is generally protected, there are ongoing debates about whether hate speech that targets specific groups based on race, religion, or other characteristics should be restricted. Online censorship. The rise of digital platforms has raised new questions about the role of private companies in moderating speech and the boundaries of free expression online. Student speech rights, from campus protests to social media posts, the parameters of students' free speech rights continue to be tested and debated. The First Amendment remains a cornerstone of American democracy, protecting the fundamental freedoms that have shaped the nation's history and allowed for the free exchange of ideas and dissent. As society evolves, new challenges and debates will inevitably arise, but the enduring principles enshrined in the First Amendment will continue to guide the nation's commitment to civil liberties and freedom of expression.